Blackstone Audio presents The Man Without a Gun, a Western Duo by Lauran Paine. This book is read by Jack Garrett. The Crescent Scar 1. Barbed wire was just beginning to show up on the range. In fact, the first that most of the riders ever saw of it was on each side of the railroad tracks, where it came down out of the Tecate Mountains, ran along the smooth, gently undulating Estacado plains, and disappeared away off in the distance, where they began the laborious climb over the Mogollons. That wire was new, and when the sun shone on it, it sparkled like a thin spider web of silver, 4 strands high, that rose and fell endlessly as it followed the contours of the great grassy land, coming out of nowhere and going into the vast beyond. There had been the usual amount of squawking from the cow outfits. In the first place, the railroad track was bad enough to cross, but with the wire up, there was no way to get the cattle into the oak-studded little hillocks on the far side of the track. The officials of the railroad company had at first just shrugged. They claimed that the cattle were always on the tracks, where they either slowed up the schedules or treed the train crews who tried to run them off afoot. And since the railroad owned all the sections bordering their track, and the cattle actually were trespassing on railroad land anyway, the cattlemen didn't have a legal leg to stand on. What the railroad said was true enough, except for one thing. The Estacado country was open rangeland, which meant if a landowner didn't want someone else's cattle on his land, he had to fence them out. The cowmen didn't have to fence them in. And the upshot of the affair was that the cowmen defeated the purpose of the railroad fence by cutting convenient holes in the fences, where they'd drive their cattle across the tracks to the other side when the feed got short. Even this wouldn't have caused much trouble, except that the damned contrary critters would usually wander back through the fence and bed down on the tracks, lounging and chewing their cuds, oblivious to the huffing, belching iron monsters that howled and steamed and grumbled at them. The leery, profane crewmen, who would throw rocks and curse and wave their arms, but who wouldn't get too close because those cattle would take off after a man afoot quicker than they'd chase a dog, were thoroughly disliked. It was a peculiar state of affairs, but except for the irate name-caller.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?